There's no shortage of celebrities with chaotic and destructive lives outside of their work. For most of these individuals, their off-screen antics are but a stain on their otherwise well-respected careers. But for one man, his chaotic lifestyle, fueled by drugs, alcohol, women, and partying, has managed to surpass all of his work. Charlie Sheen, who was once best known for his many appearances in films like Platoon, Wall Street, and his role as Charlie Harper on the American sitcom 2.5 Men, is currently best remembered for his now infamous interview with ABC News.
Yeah, I am on a drug. It's called Charlie Sheen. It's not available because if you try it once, you will die. Your face will melt off and your children will weep over your exploded body.
Although there's a lot more to the story than just one interview, and many of the finer details and events have been obfuscated by the eccentric nature of his darkest moment. So what really happened to Charlie Sheen? Charlie Sheen, real name Carlos Erwin Estevez, was born on September 3rd, 1965 in New York City. Charlie was actually delivered unconscious with an umbilical cord around his neck, although he was obviously successfully resuscitated by doctors before it was too late.
I was born dead. Get on that one for a second.
What do you mean?
Yeah, umbilical cord was like floppy baby, the whole thing. Yeah, it was bad.
Facing death before he even got a chance to live served as a sick and twisted sense of irony that would foreshadow Charlie's tumultuous life as he grew up. Charlie was raised by his mother, Janet Templeton, and his father, Martin Sheen, who was an at the time unknown actor. Born to the name Ramon Gerard Antonio Estevez, Charlie's father found it difficult to find work in his early career as an actor. Under the belief that prejudice played a role in his inability to land acting gigs, he began performing under the moniker of Martin Sheen.
I never changed my name. My name officially is still Ramon Estevez on my passport, driver's license, and so forth. And I love my name. I never would change it. But when I came to New York in 1959, there was a great prejudice against Hispanics, largely against the Puerto Rican community that I adored.
At the time of Charlie's birth, Martin had yet to find true breakout success, netting himself a single guest appearance on an episode of The Outer Limits in 1963 and a role in the Broadway production The Subject Was Roses. The latter success would birth the creation of a feature-length film, with Martin reprising his role as Timmy Cleary. His performance earned him a nomination for Best Supporting Actor at the 26th Golden Globes Award ceremony. Despite not winning, his performance enabled him to take on bigger roles in more prominent films. In 1972, Martin was cast in the film Badlands. Martin plays the role of Kit Carruthers, a 25-year-old Korean War veteran who becomes entangled with a 15-year-old girl named Holly. The film is loosely based on the story of 19-year-old Charles Starkweather and 14-year-old Carol Ann Fugit, the former of which was responsible for an 11-person killing spree while accompanied by the young girl. Despite its rather disturbing premise, the movie saw massive commercial success and is regarded by Martin as one of his favorite roles. What makes this movie very notable is it features a young Charlie Sheen with his brother Emilio at the age of 8 years old, sitting under a street lamp, the very first on-screen appearance for the young boy. The early career of Martin Sheen is crucial to the story of Charlie, not just because of his role in inspiring him to become an actor himself, but also to observe the parallels of the two and the characteristics that contrast them. Charlie Sheen is known for many things, including his propensity for drugs, drinking, and violent outbursts. His father Martin was not too dissimilar. Alcoholism consumed him in his early career, leading to outbursts both in public and at home. His oldest son Emilio was quoted as saying, "I hated him when he got drunk, because he'd get violent." Some of it he may remember, some of it he may not. But yeah, it was horrible. And because I was the oldest, it was always directed at me. But I think the Philippines was the last physical fight we had. The reason for the two being in the Philippines was for the filming of Martin's latest movie, Apocalypse Now. It was during the production of this film that Martin finally had his true breakthrough. On August 3rd, 1976, on Martin's 36th birthday, he was filming the movie's opening scene, featuring his character, Benjamin L. Willard, drunkenly stumbling out of his hotel room. The unique twist to this scene was that Martin was also drunk. Martin Sheen, who was supposed to punch the air, miscalculated his distance from a nearby mirror and sliced his hand open. However, the camera kept rolling, and Martin began smearing his face with his own blood, downing even more alcohol before having a genuine mental breakdown. This was described as a moment of exorcising his demons. Although it's worth noting that this moment was not enough to provoke Martin to quit cold turkey. That would come some months later in the form of a heart attack. This would require him to take some time off from filming and would be the driving decision to quit drinking for good.
There was a part of me that was already dead. I had to die to that part of myself. You know, I'm talking very metaphysically, but spiritually too. I was a desperate man, you follow, and a terribly dishonest man. I was living two kind of existence. And you can't live that way. You can't live healthily or whole. You're going to break.
While Martin had a personal breakthrough and managed to exorcise his demons, the same cannot be said for his son Charlie. The most likely reason for this boils down to their upbringing. Martin was raised by first-generation Irish immigrants and experienced a handful of ailments in his childhood, such as a case of Erb's palsy and polio. He also experienced the death of his mother at the young age of 11 and was nearly sent to an orphanage in the wake of her passing. This undoubtedly matured Martin and prepared him for future hardship. But there's more to it than just that, because there's no doubt that Martin's upbringing was tough. He faced many challenges, but he was also in relative safety during it. The same cannot be said for a young Charlie Sheen. It's not a secret that young actors often have their minds corrupted at a young age due to things like drugs, physical abuse, or both. A young child being surrounded by big-time actors and Hollywood executives is often a recipe for disaster, which likely explains why he began smoking pot at the age of 11. He also lost his virginity at the age of 15, after he contracted the services of a red-haired woman of the night named Candy. His father Martin eventually found out about this after finding the charge on his credit card and confronted his son, concerned at the prospect that young Charlie had fallen in love with a streetwalker. Despite these troubling behaviors, Charlie appeared to be set up for success during his high school career. He attended Santa Monica High alongside fellow future Hollywood stars like Robert Downey Jr. and Rob Lowe. He also excelled at sports, earning himself a scholarship to play baseball at the University of Kentucky. Unfortunately, he still managed to get himself in trouble. At the age of 16, Charlie and his friend got arrested after smoking some pot in his car and passing out. The cop found their stash, as well as a knife on Charlie. Fortunately, nothing came of this, as his mother was a friend of the judge handling the case. While he was able to avoid facing legal ramifications, he was arrested a year later at 17 for credit card fraud. Supposedly, Charlie had gone on a 4-day crime spree in which he and a few buddies dug through trash cans at the Beverly Hills Hotel and used the information to purchase TVs, watches, and jewelry. This, paired together with his poor grades and truancy, got him expelled from high school, and subsequently he lost his baseball scholarship, although he claims he turned down the scholarship to pursue acting. Regardless of any of that, Charlie was still poised to find success as an actor, taking his first major role in the movie Red Dawn, starring a young Patrick Swayze. Red Dawn is well known for being the first movie to ever receive a PG-13 rating and would go on to be the highest grossing movie of the year. This is likely due to the massive success of Swayze in his role, The Outsiders, which featured other soon-to-be household names like Rob Lowe, Tom Cruise, and Charlie's older brother, Emilio Estevez. All of this is to say that Charlie was entering the industry at the same time as many other actors we've come to know as legends. Shortly after the release of Red Dawn, Charlie welcomed his first child at the age of 19, with his high school girlfriend, Paula Prophet. After a handful of roles in TV and on film, Charlie managed to land himself leading roles in The Boys Next Door in 1985 and Lucas in 1986. The latter, while not much of a commercial success, will become an important milestone in the career of Charlie Sheen, with dark allegations about supposed misconduct surfacing over 30 years after the film's release. He would also manage to get a small role in the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where he played a bad boy drug addict named Garth. Ironically, Charlie had yet to pick up his drug habits, aside from the occasional joint, of course. But the moment of opportunity was right around the corner. Platoon, released in 1986, featured a 20-year-old Charlie Sheen in the role of Private Chris Taylor, stationed in South Vietnam. The film featured legendary actors like Willem Dafoe, Keith David, Forrest Whitaker, and Johnny Depp. But what's important here is that Sheen took the leading role in the film. In hindsight, this is an unbelievable accomplishment at his age. What's even more interesting are the similarities between this breakout role and his father's Apocalypse Now. Not only did both films take place during the Vietnam War, but their on and offset antics during these productions would also change the trajectory of their lives forever. Although, the manner in which their lives changed were vastly different. On the set of Apocalypse Now, Martin was faced with his own mortality and managed to clean up his act. For Charlie, however, things were just getting started. His propensity for drinking became more dire and severe, landmarked by his role in the movie Wall Street, featuring his father Martin and directed by Oliver Stone, the same man who directed Charlie's breakout movie Platoon. The film was well received and earned a handful of awards in the process. However, Charlie was frequently drunk during the scenes in which his character, Bud Fox, was on camera.
I watch it now and I'm like, yeah, okay, hammered again. Oh, geez, really hammered. I was able to I don't want to say scrape by.
It's possible that because of the flagrant alcoholism, that Oliver Stone opted to not cast Charlie for the role of Ron Kovic in his next film, Born on the 4th of July, despite their previous success together and him auditioning for the role. Rather, a young Tom Cruise was given the part after his successes in the films Top Gun and Rain Man. In hindsight, Charlie's work with Oliver Stone is considered to be his best, and many believe his career would have reached much further heights if the two had continued collaborating. But it's at this point that Charlie got a status as a bit of a pariah in Hollywood. Despite being surrounded by actors remembered as Hollywood icons like Johnny Depp, Tom Cruise, Sean Penn, Patrick Swayze, and even his own brother, Emilio, the name Charlie Sheen didn't quite carry the same star power. Of course, this lost opportunity was by no means the end of his career. His next notable role came in Young Guns, featuring Kiefer Sutherland, Lou Diamond Phillips, and his brother Emilio Estevez. In an interview, his co-star Dermot Mulroney reflected on the bad habits of the cast that took place on set, claiming that they overindulged themselves with alcohol in a way young actors wouldn't do in modern times. He recalls a handful of chaotic moments, with the most prevalent memory being the time a half-naked Charlie Sheen climbed over a balcony. Nonetheless, Charlie found steady work and massive success in the coming years, featuring in 8 Men Out, Major League, and Never on a Tuesday, alongside other actors like Nicolas Cage and Gilbert Gottfried. But even at the time, Charlie wasn't quite known like he is today. Aside from a handful of roles that saw decent success, he was most well known as the son of Martin Sheen and younger brother of Emilio Estevez, who had major roles in movies like The Outsiders, The Breakfast Club, St. Elmo's Fire, and Young Guns. Emilio was also considered to be a member of the Brat Pack, a group of young actors who often featured in movies together. This group included names like Rob Lowe, Anthony Michael Hall, Judd Nelson, Demi Moore, and Molly Ringwald. Charlie was colloquially excluded from this group, depending on who you ask. And understandably, he felt some level of jealousy towards his brother and the rest of the Brat Pack, stating, "I was so jealous I wanted to kill myself. They got all the girls, all the free meals, all the dope, all the perks, all of it. I said to myself, I'm going to eclipse all of them." In a sense, Charlie would succeed at this, although his ascension past his peers was partially due to his infamous persona rather than his acting chops. And it wouldn't be too long before his off-screen antics began to rise to the surface. The first notable scandal that Charlie got himself involved in relates to his at-the-time fiancée, Kelly Preston. In 1990, Kelly was rushed to the hospital and received stitches for a supposed gunshot wound. And after the fact, rumors began circulating that Charlie was the one to pull the trigger. In actuality, her injury was the result of a freak accident. Both Kelly and Sheen have denied that he was the one to pull the trigger, with Charlie claiming, "She lifted my pants off the scale in the bathroom and the tiny revolver I used to carry. It fell out of the back jeans pocket and hit the floor and shot a bullet right between her legs. So she got hit with shrapnel from the toilet bowl." For years, people thought there was always this conversation, this discussion about the time I tried to kill Kelly Preston. Of course, this resulted in nothing more than false rumors without merit, although it's often cited as the reason for the two's eventual breakup. Regardless of if that's the case or not, Kelly didn't seem to hold any animosity towards Charlie, calling him a beautiful person on the inside. Kelly also claims that for the year they were together, Sheen wasn't drinking or doing drugs. Perhaps she never noticed that behavior during their relationship, but others in his family certainly did. August 3rd, 1990 was the day of Martin Sheen's 50th birthday. Arriving at his parents' house both sleep-deprived and high, Charlie expected lighthearted festivities and a celebration of his father's life. But he never could have expected what he was walking into. Once he entered the house, he bore witness to his two brothers, his younger sister, his parents, his childhood friend, Rob Lowe, and also present was his 9th grade history teacher and his yoga instructor. Charlie had just walked into an intervention. The moment was so surreal, Charlie was unsure if he was hallucinating, dreaming, or he had already died. Although it took him almost 30 minutes of the intervention to realize that this conversation would end with him going to rehab.
I mean, you knew you had a problem. Did you believe you had a problem when that happened, or were you still in denial, or were you trying to hide it at that point?
I was too young to have a problem.
According to Charlie, he quickly began thinking of ways to escape, but was overwhelmed by the pleas of those around him. Rob Lowe, who himself had just begun 30-plus years of sobriety, pleaded with Charlie to seek help, stating, "Every day that you delay seeking help from now on, your addiction is in the hallway doing push-ups, getting stronger." Even more impactful was a call from Clint Eastwood, who Charlie had just finished filming the buddy cop film The Rookie with. Clint implored him to check into rehab, noting that 30 days inside could net him 30 years more of life to live. At this point, point, Sheen felt he had no choice but to go, although he bargained to spend the weekend packing and getting his affairs in order, which was actually just a cover-up for a bikini contest that he and Nick Cage were planning to host in Palm Springs. His family said no. However, he was able to bribe a nurse at the clinic, promising her $50,000 if he didn't return on time Monday morning, which he was able to follow through on. Despite this, Charlie was able to get clean and stayed that way for an entire year. However, on the 1-year anniversary of his sobriety, Charlie had a beer to celebrate. While he did show restraint in the following months, his cravings for alcohol came back, especially during social functions.
But what I started doing is, bribing waitresses and waiters to put wine in a coffee mug. You know what I'm saying? So I could be seen out, and I'm still, because everybody knew I'd gone to rehab.
Of course, this behavior did nothing but throw Charlie back into his cycle of addiction. But aside from that, he did manage to get himself more work, getting the leading role in the comedy movie Hot Shots, created by the co-writer and director of the movie Airplane. This was followed by its sequel, Hot Shots Part 2, in 1993. Movies like Platoon and Wall Street had already made their impact, and with major roles in box office successes like Major League, The Three Musketeers, and the Hot Shots movies, Charlie Sheen had started to become a household name. This is exemplified in 1994, when he received his own star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, something that his older brother, Emilio, was not honored with until 2025. Charlie was notably absent from any movie appearances in 1995. However, developments were still being made in his personal life. He married Donna Peel only 6 weeks after meeting on set for a cigarette commercial. Unfortunately, however, the marriage would fall apart, with Sheen filing for divorce only 5 months after the wedding. Charlie cited a certain gut feeling that the relationship would never work, talking about the, quote, suffocating nature of it. Another possible factor in their split was a legal case Charlie was involved in around this time. In 1993, Heidi Fleiss was arrested on charges relating to her illegal prostitution ring that she started in 1990, which was home to up to 70 different women involved in the operation. By 1994, she was facing federal charges, and one of her clients was called to testify in her trial. This client was none other than Charlie Sheen. According to Heidi, Charlie spent between $300,000 and $400,000 on her escort service and was one of her biggest clients, although Charlie claimed to have only spent $53,000 in a year. Despite the business being majority cash only, Charlie was one of the few clients to write checks, which ultimately got him caught up in the trial. Charlie was ultimately able to avoid jail time due to his testimony, and thanks to his plausible deniability in being able to name other big clients, he walked away with next to no consequences, aside from the strain on his marriage, of course. 1996 saw a widespread variety in Charlie's acting roles, making appearances in the romance film Loose Women, the children's animated movie All Dogs Go to Heaven 2, and the science fiction thriller The Arrival. He also made an appearance on the American sitcom Friends, where he played the role of Ryan, the ex-boyfriend to Phoebe. However, it wasn't long before things once again took a turn for the worse. On December 20th, 1996, Charlie Sheen allegedly assaulted his then-girlfriend, Brittany Ashland. According to a lawsuit filed in February 1997, Charlie had grabbed her by the hair and knocked her unconscious after slamming her onto the marble floor of his home. As a result, her lip was busted open so badly that she bled all over herself and would ultimately require 7 stitches. Once conscious again, Charlie allegedly forced her to remove her soiled clothes and dispose of them, and even threatened to kill her if she told anyone about what had transpired. Charlie was ultimately charged with assault, battery, negligence, false imprisonment, and emotional distress. The trial resulted in Charlie being sentenced to a 1-year suspended prison term and 2 years of probation. One condition of that probation was that he had to cease the use of drugs entirely, although Charlie didn't manage to follow through on this. On May 20th, 1998, paramedics were called to the now 32-year-old Charlie Sheen's home by his father after suffering an apparent stroke. It was later discovered that the stroke was actually a cocaine overdose after Charlie attempted to inject the drug with a syringe. This came as a shock, considering that Charlie had claimed to be a born-again Christian and had put his life of substance abuse behind him. After his stomach was pumped in the hospital, he was forced to check into rehab and had his probation extended for another year. Once again, it seemed like Charlie had hit rock bottom. However, he was characteristically able to find his way back to the top in no time. In 2000, he landed the lead role in the American sitcom series Spin City. This was potentially one of Charlie's most difficult roles, as Spin City was already in its 5th season when he joined. He was responsible for filling in for the lead role of Michael J. Fox, as his physical health was declining due to his Parkinson's disease. Despite the challenging entry, Charlie flourished in the role as Charlie Crawford, and eventually won a Golden Globe Award in 2000 2002 for his performance.
Denise, you were right. My lovely fiance had a dream I was going to win.
It was also in 2002 that he married his second wife, Denise Richards, after meeting on the set of Good Advice. As large as a moment as this was for Charlie, what would come next would be an even bigger development.
So no TV, no computer, no Game Boy. Charlie, I need you to be my eyes and ears.
Okay, but you have to be my liver and prostate.
Whoa, whose is this?
Charlie, you want to field that one?
Charlie Sheen's magnum opus is undoubtedly 2.5 Men, with 9 Emmys won and 26 nominations, being widely considered one of the most successful American comedy programs of all time. Charlie was approached by the show's creator Chuck Lorre to play the lead role without a script. While hesitant at first, hearing the name 2.5 Men caught his attention, thinking that it, quote, sounded like a hit. The show tells the story of Alan Harper, played by John Cryer, and his son, Jake, the former of which is facing a pending divorce. With nowhere else to turn, the father and son move in with Alan's brother, Charlie, a sex-crazed partying bachelor who found a small fortune writing jingles for various commercials. The character of Charlie Harper is loosely based on the persona of Charlie Sheen himself, and it's likely the show never would have been made without his involvement. In a sense, despite the turmoil of his private life, all of it culminated in his most profitable business venture. During season 1, Charlie was making $800,000 per episode, a number that would balloon to $1.8 million by the 8th season of the show. With success like this, it was undeniable that Charlie Sheen was on top of the world. He and his wife later introduced their daughter into the world in March of 2004, with a second on the way by December of that same year. Unfortunately, before the baby was even born, Denise decided to file for divorce. Although at the time of their second daughter's birth, there was some skepticism to proceed with the separation. But ultimately, their marriage would officially end in 2006. Richards' reason for filing for divorce was what she described as inappropriate behavior, claiming that Sheen had an attraction to underage women. She later went on to allege that Charlie watched a gay of boys who, in her words, looked underage. I told him I discovered some material on a website that he belongs to, which I found very disturbing. Websites which promoted very young girls who looked very underage to me with pigtails and braces. I also told him about other websites I discovered that he accessed involving gay material, also involving young men who didn't look like adults. I told him as a mother I found this information very disturbing because we had 2 young daughters and that I believed he had a serious problem which he needed to deal with and that he should not be around our children. He reiterated that there was nothing wrong with the sites that he was accessing and that I needed to turn my head and ignore it. Charlie eventually responded to these allegations, stating, "The FBI was aware of these issues. I provided them with every computer I owned. The computers were returned 2 weeks later. I haven't heard from them since. Period. The end." While these allegations are concerning, there has never been any direct confirmation of what Denise alleged. Notably, however, Sheen does not deny the allegation of looking at homosexual not safe for work material, indicating that he's potentially bisexual. Normally, I wouldn't even go out of my way to point this out, but Charlie's hidden attraction to men and transgender women is something that pops up in the midst of his future transgressions, so it's worth establishing here. Some have even speculated that Charlie's supposed repressed sexuality is a key factor in the turmoil he's experienced and the reason why he found solace in drugs and alcohol. But before anything was even official in terms of the divorce, Charlie had already found a new partner, an American actress, Brooke Mueller. After 2 years of dating, the couple would officially wed in 2008 and welcome 2 sons in March of 2009. However, their relationship would fall apart rather quickly after Sheen was arrested on Christmas morning 2009 when he allegedly put a knife to his wife's throat.
As far as you know, he still has the knife?
Yes.
What kind of knife is it?
It's like some switchblade.
Supposedly, this was provoked by Brooke making a threat to release a private sex tape featuring him and another man. What's more is that Charlie had made blackmail of his own, being evidence of Brooke's supposed drug use. These weapons of mutually assured destruction were enough for Brooke to second-guess her decision, and she quickly decided to recant her statement to the police. However, there was nothing to be done, as the cops implemented a protection order to keep them separated. While the two remained legally married until their divorce in November of 2010, the relationship had died that Christmas day. In August of 2010, Charlie pled guilty to misdemeanor assault and was allowed to spend time in rehab as opposed to jail. He was also required to spend 3 months on probation and attend 36 hours of domestic violence training. On top of this, he spent a month in court-ordered rehab, something Sheen was eager to comply with, although things would come crashing down once again. In October of that same year, a noise complaint was filed to the front desk of the Plaza Hotel in New York City at 2 in the morning. When police arrived to investigate the disruptive room, they found an escort and a naked Charlie Sheen extremely high. The room was completely trashed, with tables, chairs, and even a chandelier found scattered throughout the room. totaling $7,000 in damages. Supposedly, the mess was a result of a frantic search for his phone and wallet, which he believed the escort had stolen from him. This escort, named Capri Anderson, eventually appeared on Good Morning America to tell her side of the story. She alleged that Charlie was heavily intoxicated and personally witnessed him doing lines on the hotel's coffee table. Despite this, the two's encounter began to heat up and become consensual physically. However, after Charlie put his hands around her neck, she began resisting. Charlie put up no fight in her efforts to withdraw consent, but that wouldn't stop him from throwing a lamp across the room in a fit of rage. A month after the dispute, Capri stated her intentions to file a civil lawsuit. However, before it was filed, Charlie Sheen filed his own lawsuit preemptively, claiming that her case was an attempt to extort him out of $1 million. Regardless of who was telling the truth and who was lying, one thing was for certain: Charlie was on drugs again. Sheen's manager came out to say that the actor had just had an allergic reaction to medication, which is more than likely a cover-up to prevent Charlie from further consequence. Worst of all, Charlie's ex-wife, Denise Richards, as well as their two daughters, were at the same hotel during this event. Sheen was not arrested for this, however, he was taken to the hospital for a physical and mental health evaluation. He was only 1 week from completing his probation, although it doesn't appear he suffered any legal ramifications for this due to not being officially arrested. But it wasn't long until Charlie Sheen's propensity for partying and ingesting as many drugs as he could finally caught up with him. In January of 2011, he was rushed to the hospital for severe abdominal pains, originally expected to be an overdose, while the ailment was officially reported as a hernia in his stomach. However, after revelations of Charlie spending the past 36 hours partying with girls, drinking, and drugs involved, it became clear that this was, in fact, another overdose. Following this, 2.5 Men was put on an indefinite hiatus. It was clear that Charlie was sinking deeper and deeper into his addictions, making headlines more and more frequently. His next headline, however, would prove to be one of the worst moments of his life. While the show was still on hiatus, Charlie decided to let loose on 2.5 Men's creator Chuck Lorre during a discussion with none other than Alex Jones.
I've spent, I think, close to the last decade effortlessly and magically converting your tin cans into pure gold. And the gratitude I get is this charlatan, clearly someone who believes he is above the law. Well, you've been warned, dude. Bring it.
You might be surprised to learn that one of the biggest stars in Hollywood was talking with a figure like Alex Jones, but ironically, this wasn't even the first time Charlie had spoken with Alex. In fact, he made an appearance on his show a few years prior in 2006 to discuss the events of 9/11. The two of them discussed their mutual agreement on the potential inside job that was orchestrated that day. Charlie's beliefs on 9/11 are considered by some 9/11 truthers to be the reason why the deep state was responsible for the media backlash he was about to receive. But these comments actually came with little consequence at the time. However, his comments about Chuck Lorre ultimately resulted in CBS making the decision to discontinue the remainder of the season for 2.5 Men. This decision would enrage Sheen, who opted to write an open letter to Chuck Lorre the same day. What does this say about Haim Levine after he tried to use his words to judge and attempt to degrade me? I gracefully ignored this folly for 177 shows. I fire back once, and this contaminated little maggot can't handle my power and can't handle the truth. I wish him nothing but pain in his silly travels, especially if they wind up in my octagon. Clearly, I have defeated this earthworm with my words. Imagine what I would have done with my fire-breathing fists. I urge all of my beautiful and loyal fans who embraced this show for almost a decade to walk with me side by side as we march up the steps of justice to right this unconscionable wrong. Remember, these are my people, not yours. We will continue on together. Charlie Sheen. If you're confused at all, the name Haim Levine is a reference to Chuck's Hebrew name. The specific choice to refer to Chuck as such has led some to believe that Sheen's comments were rooted in anti-Semitism. But whatever the case, it's safe to say that the leading actor on the biggest TV show in the country calling out the creator of that same show was a huge deal. And news publications would scramble to land an interview with the disgruntled superstar, something that Sheen would happily partake in.
All these radio rants have people thinking Charlie Sheen has got to be on drugs again.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I am on a drug. It's called Charlie Sheen. It's not available because if you try it once, you will die. Your face will melt off and your children will weep over your exploded body.
The infamy of this interview with ABC News cannot be overstated, as it is likely the most iconic celebrity meltdown of all time. While it's remembered mostly for Charlie's unique and witty one-liners, there's much more to be understood in this interview conducted by ABC's 2020 team. The first question on everyone's minds was whether or not Charlie was on drugs, something he adamantly denied.
Are you willing to take a drug test?
Sure, you got a cup? I mean, I got nothing to hide.
In fact, right after our interview, he took that test and passed.
Rather than being fueled by a cocktail of various substances, Charlie rather felt emboldened to speak out against what he believed to be mistreatment, specifically claiming to be tired of being kicked around, deciding to fully embrace the persona that many ascribed to him. His method was to, quote, love it and defend it violently through violent hatred. This coincides with self-ascribed roles such as the Vatican assassin and calling himself a warlock.
I'm a high priest, Vatican assassin warlock. I'm Hitler, you know what I'm saying? Come on, man.
And what does that mean?
I don't know.
Where do these words come from, Charlie?
All those words just sound cool together. It comes from my grand wizard master. I don't know, man. Stuff just comes out, and it's entertaining, and it's fun, and it sounds different than all the other garbage people are spewing, you know?
Charlie also denies the allegation of anti-Semitism, claiming he referred to Chuck by his Hebrew name as a joke. He also addresses comments made by his father, Martin, who expressed concern over his son's health and compared his addiction to cancer.
Can I ask you about the comments that your father, Martin, made?
Nah, I'm not interested in any of that. Nah. Comparing what?
Comparing your issues to cancer.
Yeah, no, he has no right to do that, and that's judgment, and I have no interest in that. I don't care if it's my dad or the guy down the street or someone that, like, fell out of the sky. No interest in that. I don't care if he's my dad. Back off with your judgment.
He later goes on to explain that he was willing to apologize to Chuck, saying he didn't realize how sensitive he was. On top of this backhanded apology, Charlie stated his intention to sue as he was out of a job over what he believed to be an innocuous comment. During this interview, he would also manage to generate one of his most infamous viral clips after being asked about his last time using substances.
Tell me about the last time you took drugs.
Last time I took drugs, I probably took more than anybody could survive. You know,
what are we talking about? How much?
I don't know, man. I was banging 7-gram rocks and finishing them because that's how I roll. I have one speed. I have one gear. Go.
How do you survive that?
Because I'm me. Because I'm me. I'm different. I just have a different constitution. I have a different brain. I have a different heart. I have different, I get tiger blood, man.
In a sea of notable moments and quips, the phrase tiger blood was one of the few lines that really stood out, spawning countless memes and even a public appearance from Sheen himself with a bottle of mangosteen juice labeled as tiger blood. I even remember when I was a kid seeing Charlie Sheen costumes with a flask labeled tiger blood at Spirit Halloween. The overdose from January, publicly referred to as a hernia at the time of the interview, was also brought up. An eyewitness, Casey Jordan, claims to have witnessed Charlie smoking crack at a party moments before being carried off on a stretcher. He also gives his side story in regards to his meltdown in the Plaza Hotel, where he denied putting his hands on Capri Anderson and denied violent behavior of any kind. He chalks up what happened to a bad reaction to Ambien, a prescription drug used to treat insomnia. But one notable detail that was obfuscated from many people's recollection of events is Charlie's introduction of his new family. This family consisted of him and his two girlfriends, Natalie Kenley and Rachel Oberlin. These young women were referred to by Charlie as his goddesses.
These are my girlfriends. These are the women that I love that have completed the 3 parts of my heart.
Natty and Charlie have their own special connection. I have my own connection with Charlie, and then Natty and I also have our own relationship.
It seems crazy to everybody else, but for us, I mean, it works well.
It was clear that Charlie didn't take the interview all that seriously, with him frequently making jokes about his past blunders and current usage.
There's a ton of laughter in this house. There's a ton of love in this house. There's a ton of nobility in this house.
Are there any drugs in this house?
If there
Put that down for a second.
If there are, you better find them and give them to me immediately. No, they're not.
No drugs in the house right now?
Not that I know about. If I know about them, I'll find them and throw them away. It's not a big deal.
He was clearly erratic, with him speaking quickly, making bizarre non sequiturs, and most notably claiming that he stays up for days on end. If he wasn't on any substances, which didn't seem to be the case, then there had to be something else wrong.
Some are saying that you're bipolar.
Wow. And then what? What's the cure? Medicine? Make me like them? Not gonna happen. I'm bi-winning. I win here and I win there. Now what? If I'm bipolar, aren't there moments where a guy like crashes in the corner like, oh my God, it's all my mom's fault? Shut up. Shut up. Stop. Move forward.
Later down the line in 2016, Charlie would in fact be diagnosed with bipolar disorder, indicating that he was potentially experiencing a manic episode during this interview. But ultimately, Charlie was content with the choices he made, accepting that his time with 2.5 Men was up and he was ready to take on other roles. As you likely know, Sheen's erratic behavior and mannerisms turned him into the biggest story of the year. This is best indicated by the creation of his Twitter account, which was made on March 1st and hit 1 million followers in the first 25 hours of its creation. A day later, his ex-wife, Brooke, filed a restraining order against him, which unfortunately resulted in Charlie losing custody of their twin boys. This restraining order was the result of multiple alleged threats that Charlie made against her, including one where he threatened to cut her head off, put it in a box, and mail it to her mother. Things only got worse on March 7th when Warner Brothers sent Charlie Sheen's lawyer an 11-page termination notice, informing Charlie that he had been officially fired from 2.5 Men. An excerpt from the letter reads as follows. At the outset, let us state the obvious. Your client has been engaged in dangerously self-destructive conduct and appears to be very ill. For months before the suspension of production, Mr. Sheen's erratic behavior escalated while his condition deteriorated. His declining condition undermined the production in numerous and significant ways. Now, the entire world knows Mr. Sheen's condition from his alarming outbursts over just the last few weeks. Warner Brothers, CBS, and Chuck Lorre have done everything within their power to get Mr. Sheen the help he so badly and obviously needs. Entreating his family and representatives, visiting him at home, offering to rearrange production schedules to accommodate his treatment, and even making an airplane available to take him to a rehabilitation clinic before he reneged on his commitment to enter such a facility. In halting production of 2.5 Men, the show, for the remainder of the season, and suspending Mr. Sheen's employment on the show, Warner Brothers took the only responsible action open to it, morally and legally, in these painful circumstances. Warner Bros. Would not, could not, and should not attempt to continue business as usual while Mr. Sheen destroys himself and the world watches. Many reasons for Charlie's termination are cited within this document, such as his recent difficulty reading lines and hitting marks, as well as creating unnecessary tension on set. The letter also states, Mr. Sheen's condition, statements, and escalating destructive behavior caused Warner Brothers to conclude that production in the 2010 to 2011 season was untenable. Warner Bros. Could not produce the show when its lead actor had become demonstrably unstable, publicly lashing out with verbal abuse and overt threats to its executives and the creative voice of the show, as well as destroying the already fragile relationships with key show personnel that were indispensable to the creative process behind the show's success. Warner Bros. Therefore suspended production for the 2010 to 2011 season. The idea that Charlie was being treated unfairly is almost laughable. There is no benefit on behalf of the show's execs or the creator himself to fire Charlie, who is the highest paid actor on TV's top grossing show. Charlie's firing made the show's future monetary potency uncertain, and yet it was more financially viable to let him go than keep him on the show. Regardless, Charlie felt as though he had been wronged. Despite the letter stating in plain English that the contract Charlie signed warranted his termination, Charlie opted to file a $100 million lawsuit against Warner Brothers. The suit alleges that executives at Warner were pressured by Lorre to terminate him due to some personal vendetta. The suit also claims that Charlie was ready and eager to work on the show while everyone else was behind. Furthermore, Sheen sought to have the cast and crew reimbursed for the pay they would have received from the now canceled episodes. This was more than likely a performative gesture to posture himself as the good guy, and if anything, the only person responsible for their loss of income was himself. Around this time, Charlie released a video series titled Charlie Sheen's Corner, with the first episode being an 8-minute diatribe in which he lays into Chuck Lorre.
Hiya, Chuck. Cheese ball. Where you hiding, silly clown? Behind your narcissism, your greed, your hatred of yourself or women? Which personality are you cowering beneath for transparent cover? I see you, you little worm. I see you behind your plastic smile, your bitchy pout, and your desperate need to be liked. Forget love. That ship sailed when you were born, to use one of your stupid and unfunny jokes. Good luck with those tin can brain and the mushmouth of some pathetic carcass you so arrogantly attempted to trade out for this warlock.
Other episodes of this series are available for viewing online, but they're ultimately incomprehensible and confusing. However, they do paint a picture that the ABC interview was not a simple performance, but rather a genuine glimpse into the psyche of Charlie Sheen at that time. In an attempt to capitalize on his ever-growing infamy, Charlie set off on a nationwide tour. Fastball, my violent torpedo of truth and defeat is not an option. The tour was received extremely negatively, likely due to the fact that Charlie was having a psychotic meltdown and didn't even have a planned act or routine set up. This wasn't a comedy tour. The best way to describe it would be a public speaking tour, and even that feels disingenuous. The first performance took place in Detroit, Michigan, and really exemplified how much of a horrible idea this whole thing was. Attempting to capitalize on his viral moment, merchandise featuring Sheen's most notable quips was distributed, such as a Bangin' 7G's shirt and a hat that said, "I'm not bipolar." When the show was finally set to start, Sheen was nowhere to be found, and ultimately arrived 45 45 minutes late to his performance. All went well for the first few minutes, but as the novelty wore off, so did the audience's patience. In true Charlie Sheen fashion, he rambled incoherently, albeit in the most poetic way possible. I used my power against them and stuffed their arms down their gaping throats. No time to take their stinking toupees because this warlock was on the move. I have no clue what point he's attempting to make here, and realistically, neither did the audience. No one was here for Charlie or to support his recent transgressions with Warner Brothers. Rather, they were there for the meltdown, with one audience member stating, "I'm here to see him fall apart." Hecklers from the crowd demanded stories about hookers and his crack usage, with one audience member demanding that he smoke on stage. When Sheen tried to show an amateur film he had made with Johnny Depp in the 1980s, he was met with boos from the crowd. Charlie eventually promised to return after a brief intermission, although he never returned and the crowd became unruly.
We're the cops, because I was just robbed by Charlie Sheen. Yeah. Everybody in every other city that bought tickets, you just lost your money. He ain't gonna show up. Charlie sucks! Yeah, what do you mean? Charlie got offended by the people booing. Yeah. He didn't know what to do next. That was the deal then. That was the deal.
Those in attendance had gotten what they wanted, but not in the way that they wanted it. They expected the erratic yet poetic diatribes that made his ABC interview infamous. They wanted debaucherous tales of Charlie Harper from 2.5 Men. They expected to laugh at the circus that had become Charlie Sheen's life. But it was those who were forced with the unfiltered, raw, and real Charlie Sheen who had to realize that there was nothing really funny about this. This was not the living meme they saw on Facebook. This was a real human suffering a severe mental breakdown with no one in his corner. While Charlie was spiraling, the higher-ups behind 2.5 Men were planning on how to move forward, ultimately deciding to kill Charlie's character off and replace him with Walden Schmidt, played by Ashton Kutcher. With very big shoes to fill, Kutcher realized the difficult position he found himself in, stating, "I can't replace Charlie Sheen, but I'm gonna work my ass off to entertain people." The show maintained a decent success until its eventual end in 2015, although it's often regarded as poor in comparison to the Sheen era of the show. Notably, the show has had issues with another prominent actor, Angus T. Jones, who played Jake Harper. In 2012, he publicly announced he had recently converted to Christianity and publicly called for people to stop watching the show, all while still being an active cast member. As for the show's conclusion, the ending teases Charlie's return, only for him to be crushed by a falling piano. The camera pans out to feature the show's creator, Chuck Lorre, smugly looking toward the camera and saying, "Winning," before also being crushed by a piano. On one hand, this could be a simple joke, but if we read into it a bit more, it almost seems to be an allusion to the fact that no one actually came out of the situation as the victor, with both Chuck and Charlie facing the consequences of a brutal addiction. But on a more positive note, since then, Charlie and Chuck have actually repaired their relationship. After a long period of not speaking, Chuck found himself in a place of peace and decided to offer Charlie a role in his series Bookie. I've gotten to the place where it's old news. I loved working with Charlie on 2.5 Men. We did 170 episodes together before it all fell apart, and more often than not, we had a good time. Assuming he's in a good place, I'm in a good place. I was nervous, but almost as soon as we started talking, I remembered we were friends once, and that friendship just suddenly seemed to be there again. I don't want to be too mawkish about it, but it was healing. And he was also totally game to make fun of himself. When he came to the table read of that episode, I walked up and we hugged. It was just great. Although, at the time of Kutcher's introduction to the show, Sheen was not interested in that courtesy. On the date of the premiere of Season 9, the Comedy Central roast of Charlie Sheen was slated to premiere only 1 hour later. Furthermore, Sheen entered the stage riding a train, a slight homage to how his character was killed off in the show, which was him being pushed in front of a train. The roast, to this day, is the most successful out of any other. This was a brief moment of success for Charlie, as he appeared far more sober than he had in the months prior. He continued to rebuild his brand with his new show, Anger Management.
You can't fire me. I quit. Think you can replace me with some other guy? Go ahead. It won't be the same. You may think I'm losing, but I'm not. Anyway, you get the idea.
The show portrays a what-if narrative, with the main character, Charlie Goodman, being a sort of self-insert for Charlie. He plays an anger management coach and former professional baseball player who destroyed his career with his anger issues after breaking a bat over his leg. The show displays clear ties to Charlie's real life, with his father, Martin Sheen, playing the role of the main character's dad, and his ex-wife, Denise, appearing in an episode as his girlfriend. Another notable footnote in the story here is the release of Food Fight in June of 2012. This movie is infamous for many things, shortcomings, including its poor animation, subpar voice acting, and generally silly premise. And the production of the movie is also bizarre in its own right. Conceptualized in 1997 in the wake of the success of Toy Story, they came up with a movie which featured grocery store products coming to life when the store closed. This movie was being worked on until December of 2002, when the hard drives containing the assets for the movie were stolen. Despite this act likely being some form of divine intervention, the creator, Lawrence Kasanoff, pushed on and was able to release the movie 11 years after its intended release date. It featured actors like Wayne Brady, Hilary Duff, Ava Longoria, Christopher Lloyd, and, of course, Charlie Sheen as the main character, Dex Dogtective.
I'm giving you one last chance to hand them over before I cash in your coupons for you.
It is you, the great Dex Dogtective, who's about to take a fall. Or should I say, be pushed.
This movie would gain particular infamy after the YouTuber JonTron made a video critiquing it, which currently sits at over 20 million views. However, an even bigger disaster than Food Fight would occur slightly after. In May of 2013, social workers from the Department of Child and Family Services revoked custody of Charlie's twin boys from his ex-wife, Brooke. Brooke's life, while not as tumultuous as her ex-husband's, was still chaotic, resulting in an arrest in December 2011 for possession and assault. As a result, she checked herself into an inpatient rehab program in order to get clean. Although it seems that her progress was less than exceptional, as she was once again getting in trouble. Charlie was incapable of taking custody of the young boys due to already losing it in 2011. This left Sheen's other ex-wife, Denise Richards, to step up, as she took full custody of the 4-year-old twins. Despite this kind-hearted gesture, Denise struggled to take care of the young boys for a number of reasons. Due to Charlie not being permitted to see them, that also meant he was unable to visit his daughters, who Denise also had custody of. On top of that, the boys displayed some very disturbing tendencies, according to Denise herself. They started to have extremely violent mood swings, often out of nowhere. They would be calm, playing, and turn on a dime. The boys would grab anything they could get their hands on as quickly as possible. Toys, picture frames, any object within arm's reach they can pick up, and then they would throw it. They violently threw these things at me, my daughters, anyone near them, as well as the windows and walls. They have broken iPads, cell phones, flipped small furniture, and broken it, along with many toys. Bob threw a remote at the TV so hard he cracked the screen. I had to take many things out of their room because they would destroy it. I've had to put things up out of their reach. Things that normally would be appropriate for a 4-year-old have to be put away. After they break things many times, they say that I broke them or that their sister did. Mine and Charlie's daughters have been strangled, kicked in the head and stomach, scratched, bit, slapped, punched in the face and head, and spit on. Myself and anyone around them have also experienced this. My daughter, Sammy, had to be taken to the doctor after getting hit in the eye with a toy when Bob came home from a visit with his mom. Denise also detailed that the boys would wake up in the middle of the night screaming and crying due to frequent nightmares, and also noted what she perceived as emotional detachment, specifically in regards to hurting other people or animals. Supposedly, the boys would hit, kick, and strangle the family's dogs and would bite, spit at, kick, scratch, and punch their stepsisters. Denise also notes that Charlie was cooperative throughout the process and caused no issues regarding the boys. Obviously, these young kids were not evil demon babies. Rather, they are a byproduct of what is likely an extremely toxic environment, with both their parents being heavily addicted to drugs and alcohol. In the end, Brooke's brother Scott was awarded full ownership of the children until Brooke regained custody in 2014. It may appear that Charlie had ultimately managed to get his life together in the wake of his public meltdown, and for the most part, this was the case. But of course, the name Charlie Sheen couldn't stay out of the tabloids for too long. In October 2014, a dental technician filed a lawsuit against Charlie for assault, battery, sexual battery, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Allegedly, Sheen was yelling incoherently at the staff of the dental office when he walked in. After being sat in the examination room, they applied a nitrous oxide mask to his face. This provoked a reaction from Sheen, in which he ripped off the mask, jumped out of the chair, and threatened to kill the 3 staff members in the room. Sheen supposedly then assaulted one of the female employees, supposedly attempting to unclasp her bra from behind. They claim that after Sheen's bodyguard came in to break things up, Charlie lunged into a chair in the room and began stabbing it with a knife. One of the employees then attempted to administer a topical anesthetic into Sheen's mouth, which he violently pulled out and proceeded to punch the employee in the chest. Sheen's personal assistant also supposedly offered Palestino $500 for her troubles, which was potentially a bribe to keep her quiet. One of the witnesses also claimed that Sheen was high on a combination of things, including crack, Therodol, which is a narcotic painkiller, and alcohol. Sheen's lawyer publicly responded to the lawsuit, calling it ridiculous, opportunistic, and accusing the suit of violating HIPAA guidelines. It was also implied that Charlie had a bad reaction to the nitrous oxide. On top of this, Charlie's dentist denied the claim and fired the technician who filed suit. Charlie personally called out his accuser, publicly saying, "Hey cholesterol pants, maybe you should have taken the crack you so brazenly and ignorantly accused me of being on and sold it. Now that you're a jobless washout and a traitor, you're gonna need the extra dough. Lick those food stamps, you desperate troll." Ultimately, this case was thrown out, but the next notable moment in Charlie's life was his announcement of his HIV positive status.
I'm here to admit that I am in fact HIV positive.
This announcement was made due to Charlie's name frequently being brought up and rumors about having full-blown AIDS. Charlie personally was unaware of how he contracted the disease, but said that he has not attempted to hide it from any potential partners. However, he had been hiding the disease from the public for the last 4 years, and supposedly paid up to $10 million to people using his diagnoses as blackmail to keep it from going public. This included the prospect of tapes being leaked of Charlie being intimate with both men and transsexual women. Charlie's decision ended up making a much more beneficial impact than he could have ever predicted. In the coming days, Google search metrics showed people had become increasingly more aware of HIV and took it upon themselves to research symptoms, causes, and general preventative care. There was also a notable uptick in rapid at-home HIV tests, skyrocketing 95% in sales. Charlie's decision to speak out almost certainly saved lives and was effective in deconstructing preconceived notions about people with HIV. Notably, Charlie's now ex-girlfriend Goddesses had a bit of a feud when this information was revealed. Rachel Oberlin, now going by her birth name of Brie Olson, claimed that Charlie never told her about his HIV status, despite Charlie claiming the opposite.
Charlie is claiming, and again, I haven't heard the interview, that he told everyone in his life who he slept with and stuff that he had HIV. When did you learn that he had HIV?
Right along with everyone else. He never said anything to me. I was his girlfriend. I lived with him.
Right.
We were together. We had sex almost every day for a year.
Unprotected sex?
With lambskin condoms, which is not
not
productive.
yeah.
No.
Only pregnancy.
Charlie's other goddess, Natalie Kenley, denied Brie's claim of Charlie being a monster, stating, "He is not a monster. He has regard for human beings and cares about people. I do not see him knowingly putting women at risk. He's got young kids. He's also not an idiot, and I don't see himself opening up to that legal nightmare. He's a good man, and I feel very fortunate to have spent the time with him that I did, and I'm so sad to hear of his troubles. I hope he's okay." While it's technically impossible to verify the claims of either party, these allegations would pale in comparison to what came next. In an article posted by the Inquirer, allegations against Sheen were made detailing a supposed assault committed against a 13-year-old Corey Haim on the set of Lucas when Sheen was 19. These allegations were made over 7 years after Corey's death by a close friend named Dominic Brassia. Corey Haim appeared in a total of 9 movies with fellow actor Corey Feldman, earning the duo the title of The Two Coreys during the primes of their careers. Undoubtedly, the two were extremely close, and Feldman made many strong inferences to Charlie potentially harming Haim at some point. At some point during the filming of Lucas, Haim explained an adult male convinced him it was perfectly normal for older men and younger boys in the business to have relations, and that it was what all guys do. When asked about Charlie Sheen during the peak of his infamy, Feldman stated, "I'm not a huge fan of Charlie Sheen, especially the way he's affected other people that I know." Charlie flat out denied these claims and went as far as to sue the Inquirer over the allegations, calling them egregious, hurtful, and a disgusting campaign of defamations. Feldman would double down on his claims in 2020 during the release of the documentary My Truth. The documentary tells the story of how both Coreys were supposedly subject to SA when they were children, with Charlie Sheen's name being mentioned once again. Charlie once again denied the allegations, saying, "These sick, twisted, and outlandish allegations never occurred. Period. I would urge everyone to consider the source and read what his mother, Judy Haim, has to say." Interestingly, both Corey Haim's mother and older sister have denied the allegations that Charlie was responsible, asserting that the real man responsible was Dominic Brassia, the man who originally spoke to the Inquirer. It's also worth noting that Dominic passed away in 2018, shortly after making his allegations. It's safe to say that this entire situation is a total mess. It's very hard to imagine why Corey Feldman or Corey Haim's family would both accuse each other of dishonesty here, and while it's more than likely that one of them is lying, it's very difficult to know for certain. The reason being that there's no concrete info to provide for either claim. Yet, it's not a total stretch of the imagination that something bad could have happened during Corey's childhood. especially considering his own substance abuse issues and later death. Despite his many arrests, overdoses, divorces, and meltdowns, Charlie Sheen in current day appears to be in a good place. In early 2018, he decided to finally get sober for good, with his decision being sparked by an encounter he had with his daughter. Charlie preferred to drink in the morning rather than at night, and one morning, he had completely forgotten he needed to take his daughter to an appointment. Unable to drive, he called on his friend Tony to give her a ride. His daughters, who were 18 and 19 at the time, likely were old enough to know the reason he couldn't drive, which he felt great shame about. Since that moment, Charlie has not drank alcohol and had already ceased his drug usage prior to that moment. He also seems to be in relatively good standings with many who have crossed his path. He and Chuck Lorre have since made amends and worked together on a project. He continues to be active in his kids' lives and maintains a good relationship with his ex-wives. In September 2024, Brooke revealed that she and Charlie are neighbors and that they speak multiple times a day. Meanwhile, Denise Richards, his second wife, said in an interview, "Charlie is always invited to holiday dinners. There's always an open door, and that goes for Brooke and the boys as well. I'm always the more the merrier. I want everyone to get along and everyone to be peaceful." Sheen's ex-wives also have a bond of their own, with Brooke describing their dynamic as a unique modern family. It seems that despite Charlie's propensity to get into trouble, that the people closest to him still see the good. Despite his mistakes and selfish behavior, Sheen has managed to earn himself a few extra second chances, and at the moment, he seems to be making the most of it. Aside from his appearance in Bookie, he's refrained from any major acting role since 2017, possibly due to it being the very same environment that enabled his darkest proclivities. His legacy, while unconventional, has also managed to surpass many of his peers from the early days. Not necessarily through fame or through star status, but from the pure fact that there will likely never be someone quite like Charlie Sheen. I've been Turkey Tom, thanks for watching, and until next time, leave me alone.